and welcome to the DM's Book Club, a weekly book club podcast where we talk about some Dungeons & Dragons and discuss where we might include them in our role-playing campaigns. With me, we've got another guest host for the first time ever on DM's Book Club. We've got the wonderful Naomi Clark. Hello, Naomi.
What?
What?
Hi, I'm Naomi, and I am a consummate D&D player.
Yeah.
For my sins.
Well, we first met a long time ago over at Bad Moon Cafe when you were organising like a femme-only night for D&D and lots of different RPG games.
Right.
Just before that horrible thing called the pandemic. But that was the first time we'd actually met, and it was such a wonderful thing that you had organised at the time with No More Damsels and stuff. And so, how did you get into role-playing games?
So I kind of got into role-playing games at university. So there was a club. My family's really into like playing pretend generally. So when my mum was a kid, my grandfather used to say things like, imagine you're a fork. Tell me about your life as a fork in the drawer. Yeah, like playing pretend has always been quite like a heavy part of our family culture in my childhood.
Amazing.
And so it's like, it's playing pretend and you just get to do it all the time. And it's, you know, you can, it's just like kind of an extended version of that. But also, I'm not really an actress. Like, I don't really like to perform in front of large groups. Mm-hmm. So it's quite nice to be like, I can be funny in front of 5 people and that'll be great.
That's your tight 5 in front of 5 people. And then it's like, right, done now. I don't ever need to be seen ever again.
Problem solved. So
when you got into it at university, was it D&D or was there other RPGs that you were doing?
No. So I didn't start with D&D. I started with Monster Hearts.
Oh, interesting.
No, Monster of the Week. Monster of the Week. Okay. So I started with Monster of the Week, and it was a living campaign of Monster of the Week. So lots of different tables. I played a young werewolf girl, and then we had like a big final like session with portals, and like there were like 12 tables and everyone was like running around swapping tables and things.
Wow.
And a big final battle. Yeah, so it was like a really exciting way to start role playing. Mm-hmm. And I also played with a group that were really like inclusive, super supportive, really heavy on role playing specifically. Like X cards were standard.
Wow.
Back kind of before that was really like an accepted thing elsewhere. So I played a lot of non-D&D systems, a lot of Powered by the Apocalypse, before I ever really got my hands on D&D itself. So
what was that then transition like then? Because I know you play D&D on and off now. You obviously with your work with Realms and stuff like that, and also like St. Kilda, you've got a whole different range of genres as well. So is there a particular genre you like playing in? Or running even?
I don't know. I kind of like a bit of everything. I'm not super great at running like mysteries, but I really like Brindlewood Bay. Mm-hmm. I like systems that leave a lot of room for storytelling, and not heavily mechanical systems, weirdly enough. Mm-hmm. But I started playing, basically I've been playing with this group Monster of the Week and various other systems, lots of Powered by Apocalypse stuff. And then we started a home game of D&D essentially. Mm-hmm. And I played a cleric for the first time, and we did that for 2 and a bit years over multiple countries.
Wow.
Yeah. And so that was kind of my entry to D&D. And because we'd all come from such a like heavy role-playing, minimal mechanics place, I think it kind of carried that same sort of spirit with it.
Mm-hmm. You've nicely segued into what we're going to talk about today. Look at that. So professional.
I'm a professional.
You're so professional. So, Naomi, what are we talking about today? What is our topic of choice?
We're talking about the best D&D class there is, which is the cleric. Listen, I think the cleric is ideal. You get to heal, you know, you get to hit, you get to do a little bit of spells. It's a bit of everything. And also it's like narratively, it's really fun to play with because you have like, I'm a big fan of like difficult relationships with religion. If you've listened to my other shows, you'll know.
It's a big theme.
Big theme. It's like playing a paladin, but you don't have to be a dick about it.
I was going to say, that's what it feels like. Again, from my point of view, I've never played a cleric. I know, like you said, that your first character was a cleric. And for me, all I ever really hear is like, clerics, they are healers who sometimes don't heal. And that's always seen as a very negative thing. And again, with the sort of religion stuff, and I was like, well, why wouldn't you just play a paladin? Or why wouldn't you play, say, like a druid or something like that? But actually, you're right. Like, you don't have to be a dick about it because paladins are like righteous and true. And you're like, all right, like just get on with the job. It does feel like the clerics are the unsung sort of divine agents of the gods, whereas everyone always gives that sort of championship to the paladins.
Yeah, I think clerics are kind of like, if you're like a really community-minded person, I think they're a lot of fun. If you're like not sure about what you want to play, playing a cleric is an easy choice. You get a bit of everything, and no one is going to let you die. No one's going to let you go down in a fight. You are like the MVP of every fight all the time. And every time you make a choice, it really matters. And I really like that about them. You know, that there is, if you wanted to be a dick and play a cleric, you really have like a lot of power as to how things go. It's quite a fun like position to be in.
It says in the book, and we're looking at 2014 Handbook, although I know later on we're going to be talking about the latest Handbook and some of the changes. I know, how exciting is that? But yeah, so it talks about them as healers and warriors, and this idea that divine magic, it is from the gods flowing from them into the world, and clerics are sort of the converters, the mediums of that power, manifesting it in miraculous effects. And harnessing such divine magic doesn't rely on studying or training compared to, say, maybe wizards. They will learn sort of formulaic prayers, ancient rites, etc., but have the ability to cast them relying on devotion. And that's that idea of faith as sort of what you were talking about before.
Yeah, there's a lot to like about a cleric. And there's a lot of different ways you can build them as well, which I really enjoy.
Exactly. And it all talks about this idea of like, why would a cleric take up an adventuring life? Because there's not many of them necessarily. Not every temple will have a cleric to that particular god and stuff. And so it talks about this idea suddenly in the bit was like, you know, there's a bit in every single class that talks about this idea of like questions, like why do you want to be a cleric? Well, if you want to be a cleric, here's some things to think about. And it talks about this idea that yes, your god demands it, or maybe you have to protect some worshippers or something like that. So there's, like you said, there's a lot more to it than just like a mission that you've been sent on per se.
It's like the warlock in that there is someone else partially pulling the strings, but instead of that being a negative relationship, it's a lot more positive, depending on how you choose to play it. But generally the way that I see it is a more positive version of the warlock, essentially. And also you get like actual spell slots. So
yeah, you're not completely just like, done, I'm tired now.
Yeah. So the first time I played D&D, I played a cleric, and I played that cleric for multiple years. Something the GM did was made it so that there was only one of each cleric per god.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So like you're the only cleric of that god, and it really like if you're a druid of something, you're the only like druid of that type, to really make the characters feel kind of singular in the world. Like you already have like you are the only one available kind of vibes, which I think is a lot of fun. And I kind of feel like for clerics, the reason for you to be out in the world is kind of like doctors. The reason is because people are going to get hurt and they need help. It's really easy to wrap yourself into a story because you're the one who's going to be like doing the cleanup. I think they're really good like first time characters to play because they're so easy to get involved in stuff. People are always going to say, oh great, a cleric. You know, like narratively, people have a lot more reason to involve you in things, whether that's NPCs or villains or whatever. You know, you have utility.
That's so interesting because often when people go, what should I play as my first character? People go, oh, well, this is easy to learn how to play. But actually, you're right. Maybe we should be going for people that getting into the system, actually getting them, not challenging characters. I don't think necessarily a cleric is challenging compared to some other characters.
Yeah, for sure.
But getting people, like you said, involved in the narrative. So like there's a reason for you to be here. Like I'm reading through some of the starter sets just now, and it's interesting how some of the pre-generated characters, they get given a goal to get them involved in a story straight away. And some of them obviously are a bit more nefarious or a bit, you know, the rogue is off to steal something, you know, that sort of thing. But actually clerics, to learn more and to be part of the community and help heal. It's one of those things where I don't think it's talked about enough. Like we talk about obviously like the fighting aspect, the magic aspect, etc. But actually the community aspect and healing people. I appreciate I've not played a cleric, and in certainly parties I've been in, we haven't had a cleric. So obviously it's going through all the potions like no tomorrow, right? But actually healing in a world like Faerun and in the Forgotten Realms, stuff like that, it's actually quite an interesting way that people could be brought back from the dead for a certain fee.
Yeah, you have a minute with like Revivify is not that high level a spell to bring someone back from the dead, which is bonkers, by the way.
Especially like if you're one of those DMs now, like again, I know certain things like, oh, you need like the 500 gold like diamond.
Diamond, yeah.
But then that's not necessarily a hard thing to find. Later on, if you've got the money for it, like it's a ways to pay for services, so it doesn't become a barrier in the end if you're able to find someone who can do it. So having someone that's able to do it on your side, being willing to spend that sort of resource. It's lower levels. It's dangerous because or it's not dangerous. It's unlikely to get there. But later on, it's like it's kind of death becomes meaningless, I guess.
There is definitely like kind of a vibe of that, but I think there is kind of a move with people to make Revivify less of a like one pop shop. I know that that's how they do it on Critical Role specifically, with making it more of a ritual and things. And I really think that that's, it depends on the needs of your party as well, like the people that you're playing with and if that's what they're interested in exploring. But I think because Cleric gives you such a wide dip of things and it's not like you're a rogue and you're trying to like convince yourself not to steal from your party members. Yeah. Like you're automatically in such a positive relationship that it's really easy to build with other characters.
You're already thinking that your priority is you're a good scene partner, right? You're improvising. Yeah. I would suggest that the clerics are support classes. Like, yeah, they can go and do the damage and stuff like that with their divine strikes when they get a double 8 and stuff, but they can do spells, but they're not necessarily at the forefront. They're not super far behind. They can be very versatile in that sort of sense.
Yeah, for sure.
I like what you said, that ultimately your goal isn't just a selfish thing, like you said, like the rogue. It is like, I have access to these spells, or I have access to this sort of stuff, which helps others. And that should be the goal, is to keep others up.
I think playing a selfish cleric is a lot of fun, but like, I think it just makes it a lot easier if you're not sure about how to involve yourself in the roleplay or in the game. Like, a cleric is always going to be an easy fit. I like them. I think they're great.
I was going to read out some of the questions that you get from the cleric. So, like, once you've chosen a deity, so there's a whole list of, like, in the player's handbook. And also, again, that gives you another thing to talk about to your GM as well, about, like, well, what kind of gods are in their world. So once you sort of picked a god that sort of aligns with what domain you're going to take at level 1, because, again, clerics is one of the few classes that you can take something at level 1 currently. I think the only other one that I know of is, off the top of my head, is the warlock. That's where you get your sort of spell casting from. So, again, when you said before, that more positive version of the warlock, so it's not an abuse of power, totally makes sense here. But the questions you get, so you have like, did you enter this service willingly, or did the god choose you, impelling you into the service with no regard for your wishes? How did the temple priest of your faith regard you, as a champion or a troublemaker? And then what are your ultimate goals? Does your deity have a special task for you in mind, or are you striving to prove yourself worthy of a great quest? So it's some nice different sort of questions there. Does that have a sort of make you think about, like, why are you out adventuring?
Yeah, and I think also you can, if you want to play something a little bit more offbeat, you can choose a different type of god. Like, it doesn't have to be like Judeo-Christian. He's just a guy and he loves people. Like, you can make a fucked up god. That is a goddamn option. And I think it's very valid to be like, well, he's not really interested, or she's not really interested in this. They actually want me to burn it all down, so...
Okay, what can I do about it? Not much.
Yeah, I think, though, the difference is between that and a paladin is the idea of personal choice. Because it's not like, I have already agreed to this. It's like your god is like, I'd really like it if you did this, and you're like, well, I don't know how I feel about it. And you get to have that sort of negotiation without them being like, immediately like, oh, you've revoked your oath, therefore you're a different guy now.
Yeah, that's true, actually, because with paladins, obviously, they have that oath, they've pledged this stuff, and as soon as they break it, well, that's all the power's gone. You don't necessarily have that here, so you're more on an equal footing with your deity. You're sort of seen as equals, per se.
It's more of a discussion.
Yeah.
It's a compromise.
Rather than, like, a one-way argument.
Yeah, for sure.
So the main thing to note about, two things that obviously come from clerics. We'll go through, like, the main class features, and then we'll go on to the different domains that we enjoyed. They're sort of different subclasses. They're called domains, essentially. This idea that every deity has an influence over different aspects of mortal life, and you can choose whatever god it is and then look at an aspect of them to then be like, oh, that is the light domain, or that is the life domain, or knowledge domain, etc. And so you can really customize. It feels more like flavoursome, I guess. You were saying that before.
It's a vibe pick more than anything else.
Which I absolutely love. I love that vibe pick, and you go, okay, so yeah, you pick a god of death, for example. Well, there is a death domain later on, but you could also have like the grave, it's the grave domain, twilight domain, all that sort of thing. So there's loads of different like ways you can tweak it. So I like that. You're not just sort of narrowly put into like, this is it. This is one thing. You can actually really tweak it.
And also on DM's Guild, there are thousands of more like bespoke domains if you want them.
Currently, looking at the list as it is now, obviously I know it will change in the future, but there are 14 like subclasses, 14 domains.
Yeah, and these are official recognized ones as well.
Absolutely. And yeah, there's, as you said, there's loads of them on DM's Guild. There's also like 4 additional like third-party ones from like Humblewood and Critical Role. And it's wild that in the current Player's Handbook of 2014, there are 7 different domains. I'm like, wait, why do you get 7? And some of them only get like, some of the classes only get like 3 or 2.
3, yeah.
It's wild. Maybe they were thinking that more people would want to go for Cleric as a starting character. I'm not so sure. It's just interesting that they have so many for that starting book.
There's so many choices. Yeah. Fiona and I have both been very lucky to get a wee peek at the new Player's Handbook. And so the ones carrying over are the life, light, trickery, and war domains. So those are like 4 of the relatively standard. Life is like your basic. If you just want to heal, like boom, life, problem solved. If you were like, I really wanted to play a rogue, but I couldn't, or I really want to play a bard, but I kind of wanted to play a cleric. Trickery is the bomb. And if you want to be like, I want to be a paladin, but I don't want to be a dick about it, you can play the war domain, and then you get all those hitting things for free, and no one can immediately be like, no, I think you broke your rogue. No powers to you. Like, you know? And my favorite personally is the Tempest domain. So like storms, you get like your Thunderwave and your Shatter, you know, really big vibey stuff that feels kind of elemental. You're like, yeah, no, I feel like a prophet at this point. I'm like, I'm Noah surviving the flood, or Joseph and his Technicolor Dreamcoat splitting the sea. You know, like I'm really giving those like full elemental, like miracle stuff.
Because the Tempest isn't in the new DM's Handbook currently. Like, again, it might come up in like a future like source book or something like that. But it seems wild that it hasn't been included, because lots of like you sort of mentioned, there's sort of like Greek gods or biblical gods, they all have stuff with storms or the elements. So it makes sense to have it in there.
I feel like I personally would have swapped it for light.
Yeah.
I think light is maybe kind of vibe weak. Like, I feel like light and life probably could have been rolled into one, and then
Absolutely.
I would have taken like something elemental.
Yeah, I think the thing with the light domain, so this idea, the gods of light promote the ideals of rebirth and renewal, truth, vigilance, beauty, and often the symbol of the sun. It's a bit boring because it's just kind of narrow, and it's usually all their stuff is to do with fire.
Yeah.
And that's kind of it. It's not like, as you said, the elemental idea of like exploring all the different ways of wind, you know, water, all that sort of thing. So, you know, when they're like, oh, well, everyone likes this one. And I'm like, no, I do think it's one of the weakest one. Yeah, you have warding flame, the radiance of the door. It's fine, but it's also, compared to others, it's not great.
I just don't think that it's vibe different enough from life. Like, I think you could have rolled those 2 bad boys together, and then you could have left something entirely different. I don't think light and life are sufficiently like vibe differentiated to make it that much interesting. And so like in the new one, the light one is like, oh, you get to stop there from being magical darkness, and you're like, okay, like, you know, like I can cast light already, and it's probably fine.
Yeah, there's not enough for it to go on its own. Like, the only thing I can imagine using the light domain for is like if you're going to Ravenloft or the Underdark, and that's kind of it. But like as an everyday one, because that's the thing I find with these domains, like stuff like the knowledge domain, all that sort of thing, it could be applied to different adventure types and settings
really well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the life domain, just to say this, so this focuses on the vibrant, positive energy, one of the fundamental forces of the universe that sustains all life. They promote vitality and health through healing the sick and wounded and caring for those in need, driving away the forces of death and undeath. So you were saying before that this is like the ultimate, like, I want to heal. This is exactly the one you want to use for. I quite like it, like this idea of the disciple of life you get. So that idea that your healing is more effective. So even just little bits of healing, it's just adding a little bit more, because you're so good at like just and I like the idea for this particular one, like it's not necessarily like you're a doctor or anything like that. You're just a really good motivational speaker. Maybe you're like a Chad, you're like, hey, I got you, and you're like, oh, great, you know, and then you just feel a bit more invigorated because of the some cool words that aren't necessarily like a bard's inspiration.
Listen, I think healing word, the varieties of healing word that I've heard in my role playing lifetime, very good. I very much enjoyed Reese Lawton did they're there, and you're like, they're there, and you're like, okay, that's 1d8 healing. That's very enjoyable.
I like that sort of almost like a Betamax sort of like there, small kissy. Yeah, I know somebody else is like does healing word to go, and the healing word today is donuts, and you're like, and I like that as a lot. Just like
really fun.
Randomize what it is, and just let people go, great. Cool.
Everyone comes up with their own healing word, and I'm really about it.
Yeah, you can have a lot of fun with the life domain. Like, it's not just like I feel like sometimes when we don't have healers in the party, there's always that thing about like, well, the DM makes a heal bot, like sort of NPC character that just goes around and taps stuff. I feel like if I was the DM and they were like, oh, we need a cleric NPC, I would make sure that they were like fully fleshed out. They're like, they do the healing word, just so that they're like, God, I want to be like this guy. What a cool, charismatic.
what a cool guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, listen, I just think that like emotional erotic tending of wounds, what a fucking vibe. Like at the end of the fight, and you just coming up and be like, it's okay. You did really well. Let me cradle you. Boop. Donut. There is a lot of vibes there that's really fun to play with. Also, I have played with people who are like, I'm playing a cleric, but he's a paperwork cleric. I'm like, hell yeah. And it's like, I would love to heal you, but actually I'm going to need you to sign this form in triplicate.
Amazing. Getting bogged down with like paperwork, but they enjoy it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Or even just being like, well, I would heal you, but you didn't give me that chocolate bar yesterday, so I guess someone's going to have to apologize.
Oh, wow, very petty healing. I love that.
Yes, really fun.
One thing that we haven't mentioned about clerics is they have, obviously, their sort of main class feature is channel divinity. So that idea that they have a specially given power, one of which is defined from the base class, and then you can get other, at least one or two from the domain stuff. And the one that you always get is the turn undead. That idea of you could just, you just go away undead, and they go, oh, you're so scary, and run away, no matter what kind of cleric you are.
Listen, I gotta be honest, I think Turn Undead is kind of like, it's kind of a wet squelch for me.
It totally is. I feel like nowadays, and I know what they said in the new one, is that they've got another kind of channel divinity called Divine Spark, which will either increase your hitting or healing, essentially. Yeah. So you don't have to constantly turn undead, because I think it's just a nice, safe cast all, because again there's that idea that in religion there's always some sort of commentary or some sort of stance on death, so it makes sense they would have that. But yeah, if you're in a setting that doesn't have undead or it's not a regular part of the adventure, it's like, well, that's nothing I can do about it.
And you know what, 90% of the time you're like, no, I wanted to hit some zombies.
Yeah,
like it's skeletons. I don't want to just be like goodbye. Like I want to be like bonk skeletons time, know. Like it feels like, generally, it kind of feels like a narrative squelch. Mm-hmm. It's like, and it's over, I guess. Like it doesn't feel as good. I did like that they added the new thing about the holy symbol. So that in the new one, you can use the holy symbol to heal. I think it's 1d8 plus whiz, or you can do radiant, or you can do necrotic damage.
Nice.
As like a thing that you get from your base level, from like level 1. And I think like having that inbuilt into the character class, because there is something about a cleric and you have spells, but you don't have like an innate ability to heal people.
Yeah,
like that's actually not part of it, which seems like
you have to study it.
you have to like make sure you have the spell, which seems like a kind of a weird choice, like compared to a lot of other classes where it's like, oh, and one of the things you can do is a cantrip, and you're like, great, but like none of the cantrips are healing. No. Like there's nothing innately about you that can heal in the like 2014 edition, and it's like, you're a cleric if you want. Like,
I guess,
but it will cost energy and stuff, whereas like you don't really get any freebie like cleric shit actually.
Yeah, that's kind of wild, isn't it? Because there isn't any cantrips for healing, otherwise it's just you just constantly tap people, but the fact that you have to actively choose to do that, and then that comes with that joke, oh, it's a cleric who doesn't heal. It's like, actually, that takes up valuable resources of my time.
Yeah, you're like, I would really like to be able to mold earth. So
yeah, I'm doing that now. I'm still helping. That's
yeah.
So the turn undead, because before when you turned undead, you use your action, they become frightened of you, and they will use their action to dash away from you. So you, as you said before, you just want to bonk some skeletons, and they're just running away from you, like, no, come back.
Yeah.
Apparently they have changed that in the new edition, where they don't dash, they just become incapacitated and try and move away from you, but also they're afraid of you as well. So they don't run 30 feet plus another 30 feet.
They stop attacking you, but you can still go past them and be like, meh.
Yeah, exactly. So it does feel like that turn undead, it should be, I think, like a last resort. You're being overwhelmed by these zombies, and then you the undead, and then you go turn undead, and it's like, but then as you said, you're like, well, why wouldn't I use this all the time? And then it kind of defeats all the encounters as a result.
Yeah, I feel like somewhere the like energy to output ratio is not quite right yet. But it's fine. It's fine.
You also get later on, which, and this is in the classic 2014 book, this Destroy Undead, this idea that, at certain levels you sort of increase your power so that, you can, anyone that fails against your turn undead, they just, if they're a certain CR level, they just die.
They get liquidated. Also wild to be like, as a character, you need to know the CR of some monsters to know if this is going to work.
Yeah.
Never going to happen. Most GMs don't know the CR of various monsters.
There's nothing more boring to go, can you check the CR rating? And you look it up and go, it's a 3, and you go, it's going to be 2 or lower. Well, that fucking didn't work, did it? Like, I thought they were doing away with CR ratings anyway.
I think they are. I think there's like it's something plus level or something. Anyway.
Yeah. Again, it's one of those things where, because we've moved on in terms of how do we give XP points to certain people, so the CR ratings and XP via encounter doesn't necessarily, we don't use it anymore, or certainly most groups wouldn't use it anymore.
Most people I know use milestone leveling now.
Just because it's easier, especially because I think there's nothing worse with leveling up. So-and-so didn't arrive up, but they didn't take part in this big fight. Well, they don't get to level up. Everyone else does. Or, the NPC is also part of this thing, so they take a chunk of your XP as well. You're like, wait, hang on.
And you're like, I didn't even want them to be here.
Yeah, they just happen to stand by and then be like,
Jared from the shop can go home.
I've leveled up to a level 2 knight. Yeah, bugger off, Jared. You're like,
truly the vibe.
The only other thing to sort of talk about in the sort of the base class of clerics is divine interventions. This idea at level 10, you can call on your deity to intervene on your behalf when your need is great. It requires you to use your action. You describe what assistance you seek, and you roll a D100 percentile dice. If you roll the number equal to or lower than your cleric level, your deity intervenes. The DM chooses the nature of his intervention.
God himself comes out of the sky as a big hand and is like, boop.
But then you can't use this feature again for 7 days if they intervene. It's a wild one, I feel like.
It is kind of insane. And also that percentage roll is so hard to get.
Yeah.
So quite often you're wasting an action. But when it does work, and the GM's like, and then suddenly a door opens, a guy's there, and he fucking kills them. You're like, hooray!
It's like, oh my God.
Yeah, I feel like I would kind of want it to be like, if anyone in your party takes 50 HP damage or more, as a reaction, you can do this once every 7 days.
Yeah.
I feel like it should happen when things like are going really fucking sideways.
Yeah.
But I do know in the new one, you get a level 5 spell slot.
Yes, so you can just spend it like that. You can just go, I cast this spell, rather than like a god appears and does stuff, and which I think is great. Actually, more people are like, well, I can use these spells, so I'll use this as my last sort of Hail Mary sort of thing. And then it does say on this one though, at level 20 for the 2014, your call for intervention succeeds automatically, no roll required. So you imagine that you're like there, level 19. Oh no, I got a 32 on the dice roll. Well, one more level and they'll just appear. It feels wild that it just automatically, like, I feel like it should succeed automatically, and then it's like every 7 days.
At level 20, you're basically the Pope, right? And I feel like the Pope should just be able to be like, Jesus, are you up?
What you up to?
You up, babe? What are you doing? Jesus, you want to come like just chill? I kind of feel like it is insane, but also what a vibe.
Again, it feels very story like. You can imagine like the fight is happening, the big bad is getting away, and then just go, whoever is out there, please. And you do your big role play moment. But then again, it all relies on that D100 roll, and you're like, 92. Well, nope. What a waste.
It's like, oh, that's good because you get to be like, God has forsaken me.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, that's always a fun.
I guess, yeah, there's a narrative in that, but it just, like you said, it's a waste of an action. Whereas if you just do it as a feature, like you said, once every 7 days, and so you have to be like, oh, is this the moment? No, I think we've got them.
You're like, oh, I hope tomorrow's not a bigger, worse match.
Out of all the domains then, is there one that I know you really love the Tempest, but is there one that you're like, I cannot be bothered with? Like, I know you talked about the light domain, but is there any other ones that you're like, nah, wouldn't be bothered or would change anything about them?
Ooh, good question. I think the peace domain is funny because
Wait, did you not play the peace domain at one point in a game with you and me?
so we were invited to a game which was you and me
That was it, yes.
versus 2 other people, and it was about max power builds.
It was ridiculous.
It was ridiculous. And the peace domain at that point was the love domain.
That was it, yes.
They had just like reneged it. Because it was A, too powerful, and B, kind of on some level a little bit creepy, and they were like, I don't know if we can trust some of these men with this.
Yes, absolutely.
Which is why it got renamed to the peace domain.
Yeah.
They basically changed the bonds to be way less good, because it used to be that basically you would pair yourself, in our case with the barbarian, let them take all of the damage and then just teleport places to swap.
It's great.
It was very good. And we were against 2 people who were playing, I think, like a ranger.
I was a ranger and a minotaur, I seem to remember for some reason. I don't know if that's true.
And we were like, oh, you don't know how to play this game. Like, we've built something that's so broken.
There was like an actual physical battle map, but we were playing online. So the person that had
it was wild. It was a podcast with a battle map.
Yeah, but there was a bridge in between us. And the other 2 were like, well, we're going to stay over here. It's like, cool. I'm going to fly with my magic item, and then we're going to constantly keep swapping back. It was, they had no chance. I did feel kind of bad for them. Because they was like, oh yeah, we're going to get them. I was like, we've actually studied for this.
We are. We've built something that is any DM would not allow.
Emboldened bond, it's called now. So you can forge an empowering bond with people who are at peace with one another. As an action, you choose a number of willing creatures within 30 feet of you, which can include yourself, equal to your proficiency bonus. So that could be up to 5 later on. You create a magical bond for them for 10 minutes until you use the feature again. When any bonded creature is within 30 feet of each other, they can roll a d4 and add that to the number of an attack roll, ability check, etc. You can add no more than d4. But that's like a nice quick pump to everyone.
Also really good at a low level when a d4 makes such a difference.
It really does. Yeah, it's between, if you're fighting off the sort of low level characters who don't have that much armor, it's just can really add to it. Then that's what you were talking about. Then level 6, the protective bond, is that when you're about to take damage, a second bonded creature within 30 feet can use its reaction to teleport that creature and then take all the damage. Is what you're saying. So there's it's been nuked a little bit from your like just swapping people around and just like.
Yeah, it has been nerfed. I think they should have just been like, maybe this isn't it, because the peace one, they're like, it's 2 people who are at peace. I'm like,
the idea of the love stuff kind of made sense in a way to me, but again, it's the creepiness of it. We're like, let's not do that. But peace. It feels like a weak sort of like we can't think of anything.
They should have just done the power of friendship and been done with it.
You know what? That's the friends domain. Oh, maybe that's what. No, maybe that's what it's like the friend zone domain or something.
Or it could have been companionship. Or, the true bond of companionship, and then you'd be like, oh yeah, we're buddies. Like I feel like that could have been a lot of fun. I feel like the Arcana domain, just be a wizard.
Yeah,
don't worry about it. You don't need it. Just be a wizard.
Yeah, so this idea that magic is an energy that suffuses the multiverse that fuels both destruction and creation. For some gods, magical knowledge is a great responsibility. Oh, God. It's like boring. This idea of associated with knowledge as learning and arcane power tend to go hand in hand. If you want to play Gale, essentially, you got Mr. Why wouldn't you play a wizard? You've got some interesting things there, like arcane, abjuration or something. But
yeah, I feel like some of this is like, I feel like one of us should play a cleric, and then you're like, but actually I wanted to play a wizard, and then you can play arcane domain. And the same with nature, like if someone else is already a druid and you're like, well, I get to be a nature cleric, like similar vibes.
One thing I do like about the arcane domain, so like the channel divinity one, the abjuration one, is that you present your holy symbol, celestial, elemental, fey, or fiend of your choice within 30 feet. Must make a wisdom saving throw, probably, though they probably will succeed because they're quite smart. But if they fail, they get turned for a minute. But also, you have arcane banishment as well as part of that. So if they fail, they get banished for 1 minute. Which it only goes up to like 4 or lower when you get to level 17 in terms of CR rating. But that's quite cool. You'd be like, oh, fuck. Right, look, don't touch me. I need to concentrate and make sure they don't come back, Did
I ever tell you, I'm sure I must have told you the story, about doing an doing a banishment spell?
No.
Rather than a heal?
No, what was that?
Okay, so imagine the scene.
Okay. I'm here.
My friends are still in New Zealand. I'm in England. We've been playing at like what is essentially 6 a.m. for me. I have to go to London to do some uni stuff. I'm standing on a platform in the middle of like deepest, darkest Sussex on the phone. We've just had a battle in which there were multiple enemies. The party kind of got split. I was left with the big bad, and I was I can heal the NPC, or I can try and banish this guy, because next turn he's going to kill us both. That's what's going to happen. I tried the banish. He succeeded on the save. Nothing happened. He killed the NPC.
Oh.
And I was like, I feel so guilty. I feel so guilty about the fact that this NPC died. And they were like, no, it's fine. You know, it's not real, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I feel so guilty. I could have healed him. And then I'm standing on this platform. That's the last session. And this session, there's very little signal. I'm getting like a stuttered version of it. And the GM's like, and there's a letter from him where he's like, you know, it's nice to be with my wife and child again, and you know, it was a difficult choice, but if you're reading this, I'm dead. And I just remember being on a train platform in the middle of nowhere, just like crying buckets, being like, no, I as a cleric made the wrong choice. Like, he's dead. Just like
this NPC.
Fucking dwarf. I don't even remember his name now.
Exactly. Of course, like, you don't. No.
But I remember the feeling of being like, wow, what a responsibility, you know?
Again, I say this as someone who wasn't there and obviously don't feel the same emotions, but like, what a cracking like choice to make. Like, I totally would have done the exact same thing, because like you said, like the big bad will just kill us both in the next one. I have this one shot. If it works, incredible. But if it doesn't, it's still like a big story. The story moves on, and yeah, I can imagine the guilt being quite intense.
This is the thing. If you're like quite a feelsy bitch, there will occasionally be a bit where you're like, oh no, I feel responsible. But like the rest of the party was dealing with something else. They left us alone, you know, like stuff happens, it's fine. But I do remember so viscerally the feeling of like cleric guilt.
I love that idea of religious guilt in some way, Catholic guilt and stuff like that.
I'm not even Catholic, but the Catholic guilt, they really went off with that, I'm not gonna lie.
Do you think a Oops All Clerics group would work?
Yes, I think you'd be absolutely unkillable.
Yeah.
Constantly
helping each other out.
Yeah, so like you can give yourself a druid, a fighter, a wizard, and a stormcaster. Like the domains are so different and they give you such different options. Like if you did a forge domain cleric, you could have an artificer. Yeah. Like the clerics are truly like the MVPs of can be anything. And the thing about playing a cleric that you kind of realize quite early on is getting people up is a real waste of the action economy. If we're just talking like purely like mechanics, and if you want to like power game and shit, like when someone goes down, the running, the feeding of a potion, like trying to get someone up or out of, you know, death saves, all of that is like wasted actions. And with like a goddamn healing word, that's a bonus action for you, it's a bonus action for them to drink a potion, boom, everybody's up, everybody's moving. Like the difference between having like something as simple as healing word and not having it is like make or break. As far as the action economy goes, it's so useful.
Then in terms of narrative stuff, what kind of would you, because obviously you were saying before that there's only ever one type when you played that game of yours, there's only whatever one of the nature domain, or you know, that sort of thing. Would you do the same thing for the Oops All Cleric?
Absolutely. I think that GM should do that with basically all of your characters. If you are the heroes of the story, you should not. I don't know about you, I hate when I come into a town and you're like, I'm a wizard, and they're like, I'm a wizard, but I'm level 9, and you're like, well, fuck you. It's just an NPC. You're like, well, he's just better than me. Why is it's not his story. He's just some guy.
Yeah, he's a side quest character. Yeah.
It's not just a side quest. It's the DM insert character. You know, where they're like, they're like, he's a wizard, but he's sexier and cooler than you, and you only get to see him for a little bit, and then he leaves. Ha ha ha.
He wears a fedora. You're like, oh no,
no. Yeah. So I think like being the only one of your type, and also I think the same with the same way that a warlock bond is so special. You know, you're like, I have this bond with this person, and that becomes like a driving force of your character. I think the idea that you wouldn't have that with your god, which is the same vibe, I think it's really fun to have that one-on-one like relationship.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, I think because there's something the warlock, as we sort of talked about at the beginning, the idea there is definitely like a power imbalance here. It feels like you said, you was more of a discussion, but I do like the idea of having like you said, like, and we've seen it as well, like in Critical Role. I know like Jester is a cleric of the trickery domain, and then when massive spoilers for Critical Role, obviously, but when she does finally get to talk to the Traveller properly and discovers he's a nobody, he's nothing,
yeah, he's
and it's
just
like,
some guy,
and I love that. I would love to have that again. You know, Lies of Veils, Session Zero, etc. But like that idea of like your god isn't a great all powerful being, and actually you're probably more powerful than them now.
Yeah,
because I think that's a cool way of going. Like it's almost like I believe in something. Is that wait, I'm bigger than this, and you, depending on what you want from that.
And also, I think how you feel about faith. Like, one of my things is I grew up in the church and I was really into science. And there's like this weird thing about getting into your teenage years and being like, everyone's like, God is so real and I feel him. And just being like, I don't know that, like, he's just, I guess, like, there's just nothing. Like, and this is like that leap of faith stuff, getting a little bit philosophical about it. Either you have it or you don't. And like, there can be this like barrier of like, I can't physically access whatever the fuck y'all are physically accessing. And in D&D, like, you believe in God, they're fucking there, and you can like ask them for help. And like, you know, like there's that really like, so for me as a person who grew up like in a religious thing, I find it like really fun and refreshing to be like, it's there, and you know it's there, and everybody looks at you and they go, I know it's there. There's no doubt in my mind that what you're going through is real, you know, like, and having that sort of, I think that's really fun to play with. And then making the decisions where you there comes a point where you decide, is this a forsworn devotion for everything for the rest of my life? Or is there a point where I'm going to reverse the power structure? You know, am I going to reject this? And you get to play out like those really interesting things. But without, you know, dealing with your family at Thanksgiving.
Well, I feel hurt. No, but it's true, because when I first came into D&D, I kind of maybe very ignorantly ignored the faith stuff. And I was like, well, you know, they're there, but I'm not going to play a character that's about that person. You know, I was playing others, but because I grew up sort of in the UK, which is again secular, so it's not as big. But obviously, I've since moved to the US, which obviously is very much, depending on which state you're in, can be incredibly religious. So it totally makes sense that Faerû, this fantasy setting, which obviously was created in Wisconsin, let's face it, you know, this whole world, have people like be religious but not necessarily punching down as what it felt like to me when I was sort of growing up. That people were like, oh, well, they're just weird and stuff. And that's not, you know, each to their own in terms of faith. Again, I'm not trying to like put certain views on sort of thing, but it's interesting now that I look at it. I go, actually, I would like to play someone that wants to explore this, as long as it's okay with other people at the table, and explore those different relationships we have with faith.
It's wild to be like in a world where you know that there are gods, that they are real, and they are stomping about, and they have needs and wants. And to just then not investigate that, to me as a person like who grew up with like a faith, the idea that they're just like hanging out, you're like, what are they doing? And what are they? And like, people are just like using divine gifts from them, and miracles are happening all the time. Like, as a person who grew up in a faith in the world that we live in, where, you know, some people experience miracles and some people just never do. You know, the idea that gods are just stomping around like hanging out is kind of more impressive to me than the whole dragons thing. I gotta be honest. Like, you know, like big lizard, cool, but like Komodo dragons exist in this world. Like, I'm kind of cool with that. You know, like the idea that there's like all powerful like fucking guys just hanging out in a plane somewhere.
And then like when you go even through all the different settings that we've had published, etc. You know, sometimes you have, these worlds they're minimal magic, or there were gods, but there was a cataclysm. Obviously, like Critical Role is big on that sort of stuff. But no matter what happens, I feel like a lot of settings, unless you really homebrew it, will have some sort of religious connotation, also because they don't want to get rid of classes like the paladin, the cleric, etc. Because that's kind of their vibe. And unless you're going to completely homebrew where they get their magic from and whether they do exist, etc.
Sure.
But I find that interesting that in every setting I've sort of read up to now, they haven't got rid of that aspect, or if it's like the gods are dead but there are still people and they are chosen and all that sort of it, it doesn't remove it completely, which again, like I said, right when I first started, I was like, oh, I'm not interested in it because that's what I meant. But now I'm like, wait, I'm missing out, as you said, I'm missing out a whole fucking portion of the story.
Wild.
Yeah.
I think that there is something innate in the human experience that we like to believe in gods. Like every culture from beginning to end has created their own creators. And I think the idea that when we play pretend, we wouldn't also do that on some level, you know, like that's inherent to human nature. That is always going to be a part of it, no matter how like unmagical or, you know, like even if you're playing something like urban fantasy, you know, people have belief in luck or belief in escaping death or the powers that control the city. You know, we create our own gods all the time. And I think being able to do that in a spellcasting like fantasy world where you get to control the parameters of that is I think that could be really fun, and I think it can be kind of healing in a way. On some level, it immediately says to you, you are special and someone is listening. And what a beautiful thing that is.
Yeah,
everyone should play a cleric.
That's your sign-off moment. It's like,
that's my goddamn sign-off. Whatever you're going through, there's a guy out there and he cares specifically about you. And he's like, fucking, he's a D100 roll away. You know, like, what's not to like?
I definitely agree with you. I think it's something nice about going into a story, again, I know I keep going over, but, you know, Lines of Veils, all that sort of thing, where people are happy to explore it and they don't punch down, because especially right now in the world, I'm very aware that, you know, real life religion and the conflicts that are happening, it can be quite scary to talk about these things, and people are separated and isolated as a result.
Also, like, as a queer woman myself, like, my relationship with faith is always going to be complicated, you know, and being able to do that in a way where, you know, I get to set the parameters of it is also good.
Yes. Yeah, you get to explore those ideals in a safe way that doesn't necessarily overstep your boundaries. So yeah, I didn't know we were going to talk about this when we were like, let's talk about clerics. But thank you so much, David. This was actually, I genuinely like, I really want to now play a cleric. I've never played one.
You're a convert.
I am a convert.
You.
Praise Lathander, you know, all that sort of thing. But yeah, because I feel like there's currently, obviously, I know when the time this episode comes out, I think the Player's Handbook will be out, the new version. So go and check it out, obviously. And like, I do feel like from what I watched from the video and from what you said as well from reading it, it does feel like they've done some really good changes to make it even better.
Yeah, I think so. Despite the lack of a Tempest domain, it's pretty good.
But again, as you were saying, there are so many domains out there on GM's Guild and DM's Guild, and so you can easily get and also I do feel like you can still play with these ones. You just have to double check, because I think there's like a note saying like, hey, just so you know, you can't combine all these things together. You have to pick or choose some depending on what domain you are doing. But before we go, Naomi, where can we find you? What projects have you got coming up? And where can we listen to more of your work?
Ooh. If you want to hear me play a chicken nugget wizard, you can find me at Realms Pod on the Liminal London set. If you want to talk about faith and think about how faith interacts with humanity, you can check out my audio drama, where you can find at the Kilda all over the internet, Secrets of St. Kilda. And as to projects I've got coming up, by the time this comes out, I will be soon to publish in Rowan Rook and Deckard's Heart, Dagger in the Heart actual play. Woohoo! And I am playing a handless woman called Hiker.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's great. It's really good. I'm doing a great job, I'm not gonna lie. And if you're not sure what you want to see and you want to see a smattering of what I'm involved in and streams and podcasts I'm on, you can follow me all over the internet at Naomi Thinks It. And it was lovely to be on the show.
It's finally got you on after me going, we should get you on, and then not replying to anything for months and months and months.
Listen, we've been busy.
We've both been busy. But I would love to have you back on for any other topics and stuff. So don't worry, I will grab you afterwards.
I want to talk about clerics again.
Again? Oh well. Oh no. All right. Well, thank you so much, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.